Have you ever wondered why many people don't notice the signs that a loved one is nearing the end of their life? The truth is, our bodies often send warning signals 6 to 12 months before it happens. In this video, we'll share 5 important signs elderly people show in their final year. Subtle signs you might miss, but shouldn't ignore. Did you know that more than 70% of families realize these signs too late? What if you could spot them earlier? How can you tell what's just normal aging and what's really a cause for concern? By the end of this video, you'll have the knowledge and emotional strength to support your loved ones in their final months, making their remaining time as meaningful as possible. The first sign, and probably the easiest to notice if you're paying attention, is unintentional weight loss. But it's not just about looks. This is your loved one's body giving you a signal that something deeper is going on. When an elderly person loses more than 5% of their body weight in 6 months without trying, it's time to take notice. There are 3 main reasons why this happens. First, their body has trouble absorbing nutrients the way it once did, like a garden hose with too many holes. Second, their metabolism slows down, burning fewer calories. And third, something I see often, their appetite decreases because food just doesn't taste or smell as good anymore. I remember my friend Marge telling me last week, "Tom, I used to love chocolate cake. Now I can hardly tell the difference between that and meatloaf." That's a perfect example of what happens when taste buds fade. Let me tell you about Ellen, an amazing 83-year-old grandmother whose family missed this warning sign until it was too late. Her daughter Sarah shared this story. Ellen's family only visited her during the holidays. But that Christmas was different. When Sarah walked into her mother's living room, she nearly gasped. Ellen was wearing her favorite red sweater, but it hung off her like it was on a wire hanger. Without anyone noticing, Ellen had lost nearly 15 pounds in 7 months. When Sarah mentioned it, Ellen just shrugged it off. "Oh honey, I just don't feel hungry like I used to," she said, brushing it aside. After some gentle urging, Ellen saw her doctor. The diagnosis left them stunned: pancreatic cancer. That's what caused the weight loss. Sadly, just 9 months after that visit, Ellen passed away. What breaks my heart about this story, and why Sarah still tears up when she talks about it, is that they could have spent those 9 months together differently. Sarah told, "If we had noticed Mom's weight loss earlier, we could have done so much more. We could have taken that Alaskan cruise she always wanted. We could have recorded her stories for the great-grandchildren." It wasn't about changing the outcome. It was about making those last months better. And it all started with noticing those small changes in the person you love. The second sign is deep, bone-weary fatigue and weakness that can't be explained by normal daily activities and doesn't get better with rest. This isn't the usual tiredness we all feel after a busy day. This is something much more serious. As the body prepares for life's final chapter, its energy systems begin to change. The heart doesn't pump as strongly, blood flow slows down, and tissues aren't getting enough oxygen to work properly. That's why someone elderly might suddenly feel worn out doing things they used to do easily just a few months ago. Pay attention when your loved one stops doing things they once enjoyed, like skipping hobbies or turning down social invites. Not because they've lost interest, but because they simply don't have the energy anymore. This isn't about being lazy. It's the body conserving what little energy it has left for the most important functions. I want to tell you about Robert, a retired professor I met when he was 78. Robert was known in his neighborhood as the early bird. He'd wake up at 5 a.m. every day to walk 2 miles around the lake near his home. Rain or shine, he kept this routine for 15 years after retiring. It was his pride and joy. But Martha, his wife, noticed a change when Robert started cutting his walks shorter. At first, it was just 1.5 miles. Then he switched to walking around the garden. Eventually, he stopped altogether. They blamed the cold weather at first, then his sore knees. Those were easy excuses, but they weren't the real cause. What stood out to me when Martha shared this story wasn't just that Robert stopped walking, but the pattern that followed. He stopped going to his weekly chess game. He stopped attending his beloved book club. And most telling of all, This man, who used to devour thick history books in a day, could no longer finish even a short article. About 3 months before Robert passed away from heart failure, he confided in his wife. "It feels like I'm carrying a boulder on my shoulders all day long," he whispered. "Even eating a full meal wears me out completely." We often mistake it for laziness or depression, when it's really the body quietly telling us it's shutting down. The third sign involves changes in thinking and social behavior. As someone approaches the end of life, the brain is often one of the first parts of the body affected by reduced blood flow and oxygen. You might notice more moments of confusion, even if your loved one has never been diagnosed with dementia. They might forget things that just happened, ask the same question multiple times, have trouble recognizing family members, or even get lost in familiar places. Another common sign is what I call turning inward. Your loved one might become quieter, less interested in talking, or spend long periods looking out the window. Families often mistake this for depression, but it's usually something else entirely. This isn't just a mood shift, it's a natural part of the process where the body and mind are preparing for departure. It's like they're slowly disconnecting from the outside world and focusing inward. This withdrawal often has a peaceful quality, especially when we don't try to fight against it. Let me tell you about Sophia, a 92-year-old woman. Sophia was the life of every family gathering, sharp as a tack, with a great memory and fascinating stories about her life during the Depression and World War II. Her granddaughter Lisa shared that about a year before Sophia passed, the family noticed small changes. At first, Sophia forgot the names of a few neighbors. Then she started mixing up her grandchildren, calling Lisa by her cousin's name, something she'd never done before. The family became most concerned when Sophia, who had always been the first to greet guests with open arms and fresh-baked cookies, started retreating to her bedroom when visitors arrived. "Mom's not the life of the party anymore," her daughter confided with a sad tone. During her final months, Sophia would often sit by her bedroom window, staring out at her garden with a faraway look in her eyes. When asked what she was thinking, she'd just smile softly and say, "Sometimes things are most peaceful when you just listen." Lisa later told me her biggest regret was that the family had kept trying to pull Sophia back into conversations and activities, instead of understanding that this was just a natural part of her end-of-life journey. They'd turn up the TV, invite more people over, and try to engage her in games and discussions she once loved. "We didn't realize that Grandma was preparing in her own way," Lisa said. "We thought we were helping by keeping things normal. But what she really needed was for us to sit quietly with her, hold her hand, and just be present. We were so focused on keeping her in our world that we didn't see she was already transitioning to somewhere else." If you're still watching this video and finding these insights valuable, please comment number 2 below to let me know you're here. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any videos. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Now, let's move forward to the next. The fourth sign is a noticeable weakening of the immune system, shown through frequent infections and wounds that take a long time to heal. Our bodies have a remarkable ability to repair themselves, something I've always found fascinating. But this ability tends to decline significantly in the final year of life. Another red flag is when small wounds, like cuts, bruises, or pressure sores, take weeks to heal instead of days. The skin that once healed quickly now seems to struggle with even minor repairs. What's especially concerning is that infections in the elderly don't always show up with the typical signs like a high fever. Sometimes the first sign might be a sudden change in alertness or behavior, something families may mistakenly attribute to age-related confusion or even dementia. Let me tell you about James, an 88-year-old retired airline pilot. His son, Michael, shared that his dad rarely got sick, but about 10 months before he passed, James started having a series of health problems that seemed unrelated at first. It started with a cold that lingered for nearly a month instead of the usual week. Then, a small gardening cut that would have healed in days before turned into a serious skin infection that required antibiotics. What really worried the family was when James had 3 urinary tract infections in just 5 months. The doctors couldn't find any underlying issues. Michael said, sounding heavy with the memory. They just said Dad's immune system wasn't as strong as it used to be. The family treated each infection as a separate event, not seeing the bigger picture. What struck me most about James's story was how these infections presented themselves. Instead of the usual symptoms like pain or burning, James became confused and lacked energy. One evening, we found Dad trying to put his jacket on his legs like pants, Michael recalled. When we took him to the hospital, they found a serious case of pneumonia without the usual symptoms of coughing or fever. Michael's biggest regret? The family didn't realize sooner that these recurring infections were part of a bigger issue. We were so focused on treating each infection, making sure Dad got the right antibiotics and finished the treatments, that we missed the bigger picture, he said. By the time they realized what was happening, James had spent months bouncing in and out of doctors' offices and hospitals. If we'd understood sooner, Michael said, tears in his eyes, we would have spent that time differently. Dad loved the mountains. We could have taken that trip to Yellowstone he always wanted, instead of sitting in waiting rooms. That's the heartbreak of missing this sign, treating each infection like a separate problem, instead of understanding they're part of a bigger story unfolding. The fifth sign, and perhaps the most physically obvious one, is significant changes in breathing and circulation. Research shows that the heart and lungs are typically the last organs to give up when the body is preparing for its final journey, and they often send signals months before. Watch for changes in breathing patterns, irregular rhythms, pauses between breaths, or something doctors call Cheyne-Stokes respiration, a pattern where rapid, deep breathing alternates with periods where breathing stops altogether. For circulation, look for cold hands and feet, even in warm weather. You might also notice color changes, skin becoming pale, slightly bluish, or developing a mottled appearance with patches of uneven color, especially on the legs and hands. This happens because the heart isn't strong enough to pump blood to the extremities anymore. These changes aren't just uncomfortable for your loved one, they're the body's way of conserving energy by directing blood flow to the most vital organs first, like the brain and the heart itself. Eleanor, a spirited 91-year-old Italian-American woman. Her daughter Diane told about 8 months before Eleanor passed away from heart failure. Diane recalled, "Mom was always the person wearing light sleeveless blouses even in January. She constantly bragged about her hot Italian blood and rarely felt cold. So when she started pulling 2 blankets over herself during a heat wave in July, we knew something wasn't right." The first sign was Eleanor's hands and feet. They were consistently cold to the touch, even on the hottest days. Then the family began noticing changes in her breathing. Sometimes she'd stop breathing for several seconds, terrifying everyone in the room, then resume as if nothing had happened. What worried me most was when I noticed Mom's lips sometimes turning slightly blue after walking from the living room to the kitchen, Diane shared. The doctor said it was a sign of oxygen deprivation. What touched me most about Eleanor's story was a moment Diane shared from her mother's final week. Despite the difficulty breathing, Eleanor insisted on teaching her great-granddaughter how to make traditional Italian wedding cookies. She couldn't do the mixing herself anymore. Her hands were too cold and blue, but she sat at the kitchen table giving instructions to my daughter, Diane said. Those cookies weren't perfect, but they were made with 4 generations of love. That's the memory we never get used to. As we wrap up our journey through these 5 subtle yet profound signs, remember this. Recognizing them isn't about facing the inevitable with fear, but with love and preparation. From weight loss and fatigue to confusion, recurring infections, and changes in behavior, each sign offers us the precious gift of time to make the right choices. I hope these insights help you notice what truly matters. Don't forget to subscribe for more tips on supporting our elderly loved ones with dignity and compassion.